Hi, my name is Eric Meyers, and I wrote the book called Elements in Evolution, The Spiritual Landscape of Astrology. And I wanted to have these videos now to discuss some more of the central points that are made in the book. You can look at it online at www.soulvisionconsulting.com, and there's information on how to order on the website. So one of the main threads that runs throughout this book is that we can look at things from different perspectives. We can look at things from what not only me, but many call the relative perspective, which is the level of separation. And at the relative level, we tend to view things in dualistic ways. Good and bad, male and female, light and dark, any dichotomy or polarity is at the relative level. Another way to look at things is from the transpersonal level, which is the view from oneness. The transpersonal level does not make distinctions between things being greater than or less than, or good or bad, or even male and female, which is a critical point that I want to get into. And so that's an overarching thread that goes through the book. And what I want to do with this video is to discuss the central players of astrology, the sun and moon, from this transpersonal level. So again, this does not in any way compromise or replace or hinder in any way the relative level. It's just another perspective that we can use. So at the familiar relative level, the way that almost all astrology is understood, let's review real quick. You have the sun, which is paired with the masculine. The sun is paired with day, things that are light. The sun is things that are overt. The moon goes with the feminine. It goes with the receptive, the yin, things that are more covert even, things that are more receptive versus active. And so that is relevant here at the relative level. And the luminaries make an obvious and complementary pair. In fact, when we look at the luminaries in the sky, we notice that they're about the same size to us from this perspective on Earth. And clearly we have the sun, which is much more relevant in the daytime, and the moon, which is much more relevant at the nighttime. The light of the night. So the relative level, that all is operable within the realms of separateness. Now, from the transpersonal level, these divisions into good or bad, or male or female, are really irrelevant. And so when we talk about the luminaries at this level, I want you to keep in mind that this is in no way promoting the sun at the exclusion of the moon, if you were to look at it as male and female. It's not looking at it from that perspective. The perspective that it is looking at is this, is that to me, and my understanding, is that the moon relates to the separate self, to the basin of your own individualized consciousness. It looks at what you've absorbed in your spiritual journey, the impact all of life has made on you, and how we've received life. And it has to do with then our consciousness as a separate self. And so the moon has a lot to do with what some people call the ego. And we approach all of life from this very subjective foundation of our experiences. In contrast, the sun would be looked at as a broader field of energy, creativity, awareness, presence, vitality that is broader than us. And so we are increasing our awareness. We're increasing our ability to be present and vital and engaged, because the moon can be contracted. The moon can be inward. It can hold on and protect, and it's very reactive at times. Whereas the sun in this view is about opening. And so if you look at the astronomy, you really see this, is that the sun is far larger than the moon. In fact, you can fit 64 million moons inside the sun. So we're dealing with something that is far broader, much more massive in scope. In my view, it's the energy. The sun is indicative of just the energy of spirit, of source. Whereas the moon is a concretized little pebble of what's been hardened. You have all of energy potential, and what we crystallize and harden is our little ego, is the moon. The other thing about the sun and moon is this, is that although from the relative level we look at moonlight, we look at the moon as being the light of the night, in reality there is no such thing as moonlight. There is only reflected sunlight. And so the analogy here is that as separate cells of egos, we are reflecting the broader awareness of spirit. Is that our energy and our awareness is actually belongs to something that is broader and broader than us, and also contains us. So the moon needs the sun, but the sun doesn't need the moon. There's a big difference here. What I mean by that is that the separate self, the autonomous ego, needs the broader sustenance and energy of spirit for it to exist. But spirit, sun, doesn't need us for it to exist. In fact, I'm sure that spirit is operated just fine without humans participating in it. And so we see a real great difference there between the roles there, where the moon needs the sun, but the sun does not need the moon. Also, everything revolves around the sun in our solar system. It is the life force and sustainer of all living things. The sun is epic in scope in the solar system. It's called the solar system, named after the sun. Whereas the moon is a one satellite on one little planet. It doesn't have that scope at all. It's not responsible for sustaining and nourishing life that exists, here on Earth. That's the sun cell. And then finally, another way to see the different perspective of the sun and moon is that the sun is actually a star, and it brings us to the wider galaxy, the wider canopy of stars, and so it gives us membership in something far larger than the ego, the separate self, which revolves around the Earth. So the way to look at this from the spiritual perspective is that we are evolving. We have the foundation of the separate self, of the personal story, of the ego. And as we incarnate here on planet Earth, the moon is encircling us. And geocentric astrology has that perspective, of the moon being closest to us. Meaning, in my view, the foundation of the soul, of what it's received, what it's absorbed, how we've been impacted. And within evolution, we are growing. And the analogy that I give is the seed. The moon is like the seed, and the sun is like the flower. It develops up, and it develops in greater color and complexity. And most importantly, the sun is about presence, about the energy of the now. And so my book, Between Past and Present, The Spiritual View of the Moon and Sun, is all around this idea and how it relates to actually looking at charts. But basically the idea is that until we become more aware, meaning sun, solar, present, engaged, the ability to be aware of who we actually are, until we develop awareness, we are unconsciously and instinctually and perpetually operating from unconsciousness and repeating the same old patterns over and over in a contracted, ego defensive way. Usually the moon is involved with protection, survival, and it's very useful. Where would we be without it? We need to survive. However, operating only in survival mode inhibits us from the greater field of presence and awareness. Presence meaning heat, and awareness being light, the light and heat of the sun, in this transpersonal, broader, more analogous to source energy of the sun. So I bring this understanding of the luminaries into all of my work, and also the way that I counsel my clients, is that at one level, yes, we can look at the sun and moon as masculine and feminine parts, and that's really relevant at the relative level, because the moon is more receptive, more yin, feminine, and the sun is more yang and masculine. That's all relevant, and certainly we can look at things from this fashion. I'm just merely proposing that perhaps there's another perspective that we can have on the luminaries themselves in a spiritual view, rather than at a more personality or psychological level, which is the relative. At the spiritual level, it's about the moon is involved with dualities themselves, and the sun is about oneness. And so there's actually a quote from Eckhart Tolle, and I want to read to you. And I highly recommend this book, The Power of Now, which in my view is probably the most comprehensive book ever written about the sun and about the ability to be present. And what Tolle says is, this is the power of now. He says that past and future obviously have no reality of their own. Just as the moon has no light of its own, but can only reflect the light of the sun, so are past and future only pale reflections of the light, power, and reality of the eternal present. So when we are present, and you've probably experienced this, there is a timeless quality. And I believe that when we develop our sun, it has a lot to do with spiritual awakening, is the point that I'm getting at here. Is that the moon, we all have a moon regardless of gender, and the moon can be analogous to our small self, that's more egoic, that has preferences. I like this rock band more than that one. I like this person more than that one. Whatever our personal egoic preferences are, that's at the moon. And then when we develop into the sun, we let go of those attachments. We let go of the confinement in the personal egoic self, and we have a broader sense of awareness that perhaps even flows or engages with things that are beyond us, that are outside of us. So there is that expansion that is relevant here with the sun and moon. So I wanted to just introduce that idea and say a few things about it, and certainly I'll have more discussion about this in some of the other videos. And once again, if you're interested in me or this book or my work, it's soulvisionconsulting.com. Great, thank you.